You know, in 2004, Topeka is going to turn 150 years old. And the same year, it's the 150th anniversary of territorial Kansas and the 50th anniversary of the Brown decision. That's going to be a real watershed year to me because it gives us a chance and a reason to go back and examine the development, the settlement, the colonization, you know, all of those terms that are out there. But African Americans in Topeka, you know, coming in during the era of Ritchie's edition and all of that whole period after the Civil War, were an industrious lot in terms of, they came in with certain skills and they came in with certain hopes, you know, because Kansas promised land and freedoms and education and, you know, enterprise, all of those things. They came here with that on their minds. Kansas, just like the era of Ritchie and John Brown and early Kansas, had been very actively pursuing the right to equal educational opportunity. Kansas law, 1879, even then there was some conflict in how the law was written and eventually passed. 1881, Tenon versus Ottawa School Board, first school integration case. From 1881 to 1949, you know, 11 cases every few years. African Americans were back in court, challenging that law of 1879, going to the Kansas Supreme Court. Many of them won because they were small communities. I think that's important to note. So African Americans in Kansas had met early victories with respect to schools being segregated. And it seems like a natural progression that we would end up 1950 to 54 with the Brown versus the Board of Education. Really kind of acting out something that had gone on for a long time in Kansas, you know. We're knocking on the door again. You know, when is Kansas going to live up to its promise and stop? When we started working on this project back in 1990, the first point of contact for me was a group called Historic Topeka. It seemed like a natural place to take this issue. At that point in time, I went to the chairperson of Historic Topeka and talked about my interest in saving this building and the possibility of making it something of national significance. That was the first time anyone has ever physically laughed in my face because it seemed like such a ludicrous idea to that person that anybody would want to resurrect this history and to put it out front as a showplace and a showpiece for Topeka and Kansas. Not deterred, but struck by the fact that somebody felt so empowered that they would suggest to me, you know, an individual by family associated with Brown, an individual who was working on this project, that this was something laughable. We are firmly convinced that the Brown story, as most people know it, was a construct of white America. You know, a little girl wanted to go to school, couldn't because she was black, father was angry and sues the school board. When you understand the reality of Brown and not that public myth, you know, then you understand that it was about creating a comfort zone. People were comfortable with the kid just wanted to go to school. People were not so comfortable with the 105 years of African Americans pursuing relentlessly these rights. You know, it represents more than a century, you know, of struggle to be recognized, to be enfranchised. It's a very meaningful place, someplace you can touch and feel and walk into and, you know, breathe in and learn from. Brown versus the Board of Education has been in textbooks, you know, for these decades. However, it's not been comprehensively represented. What this national park will allow us to do through the curriculum that will come out of the park, through the interpretive programs that will take place at the park and elsewhere, the work that the Brown Foundation is already doing in the way of curriculum and lecturing around the country and seeking to educate the population in general, I think says that finally Brown will be understood comprehensively.